Good day, everyone. Welcome to the International Research Conference on Technology, Engineering, Culture, and Society. I am Engineer Joven Cablas, your virtual oral presenter from the island that fits your taste and famous for its world-class Manggahan Festival, Guimaras! A faculty member of the College of Engineering and Industrial Technology of the Guimaras State College. Today, I am happy and privileged to share with you my research paper entitled The Potential Use of Flipped Classroom in Teaching Calculus in the First Year Engineering Classes of the Guimaras State College. Background of the study. The main objective of this study is to determine the effect of flipped classroom in teaching calculus among the BS in Electrical and BS Mechanical Engineering students. Consequently, calculus is one of the wide-ranging and intricate courses in tertiary education and continuously quoted as the toughest course in any engineering licensure examination. Presently, flipped classroom models have been utilized in some parts of Asia in order to increase students' achievement in calculus. Flipped classroom is a pedagogical approach which means that activities that have been traditionally taken place inside the classroom take place outside the classroom and vice versa. Flipped classroom has been defined by Granata in 2014 as means of using web-enabled instructional strategies that allow educators to spend class time interacting with students rather than lecturing. This study seeks the effectiveness of flipped classroom as to expand the students' achievement in mathematics, as well as to lessen their level of anxiety. Henceforth, the researchers thought of directing an experimental research on the use of flipped classroom in teaching calculus among the College of Engineering and Industrial Technology students of the Guimaras State College. Motivation and objectives. This study aimed on employing flipped classroom approach as an intervention in order to make first-year electrical, mechanical engineering students to improve their problem-solving skills in calculus. Specifically, it sought to answer the following questions. First, what is the calculus performance of the experimental group before the intervention? Second, what is the post-test performance in calculus of the experimental group after the intervention? Third, what is the attitude of the students toward flipped classroom technique? Fourth, is there a significant difference between the pre-test and post-test results of the respondents utilizing flipped classroom in teaching calculus? Statement of contribution. There is no significant difference between the pre-test and post-test results of the subjects utilizing flipped classroom in teaching calculus. Methodology. Flipped classroom applies a mastery learning model that requires each student to master a topic before moving to the next one. This study will employ the mastery learning theory of Benjamin Bloom. After the initial instruction of the unit, the teachers give first formative assessment based on the set of specific learning outcomes of the unit. After the initial instruction of the unit, the teachers give first formative assessment based on the set of specific learning outcomes of the unit. Similarly, the purpose of this first formative assessment is to give feedback on the students' learning. It might give the students information to identify what they have learned and what they need to acquire. Then the teacher provides corrective activities to the students to work on the area they have not yet mastered. Moreover, the teacher may distinguish alternative learning resources such as textbooks, handouts, CDs, videos, or computerized instructional lesson, or possibly will be paired with exercises. The correctives are personalized. Conceptual framework. This study involved learning integration of the first-year electrical and mechanical engineering students, experimental group as independent variable. Also, the intervening variables is the flipped classroom method. Additionally, the dependent variable is to improve the ability of the students in solving mathematical calculus problems. Results via post-test scores and satisfaction of the students toward the flipped classroom approach, an appraisal was made to determine its efficacy. This section covers the result of students' performance before the intervention, the results of students' performance after the intervention, attitude of students toward flipped classroom, and the determination of the significant differences between pre-test and post-test outcomes of the respondents utilizing flipped classroom in teaching calculus in mathematics using statistical package for the social science version 22. Discussions. Students' academic performance before the intervention. Table 1 provides the information on the students' academic performance before the intervention in terms of pretest score, percentage equivalent, description, numerical equivalent, percentage, and frequency. Table 1 shows that most of the respondents, 5 or 25%, got a score of 10 to 12, with a percentage equivalent of 75 to 79% described as fair or passing. Then 3 or 25% get a score of 13 to 14, with a percentage equivalent of 80 to 84% described as good. Furthermore, 2 or 10% get a score of 20, with a percentage equivalent of 95% described as excellent. However, 1 or 5% got a score of 10 to 19 and 15 to 17 with a percentage equivalent of 90 to 94 and 85 to 89 respectively, where described as superior and very good. Moreover, 8 or 40% of the respondents got a score of 0 to 9 with equivalent percentage of 65 to 74% described as failure. Overall, 80% of the respondents failed and reached up to good level only. Minority of 20% were considered very good, superior, and excellent. It can be construed that there is a dire need for intervention. Table 2 provides the information on students' academic performance after the intervention in terms of pretest score, numerical equivalent, percentage equivalent, description, frequency, and percentage. Table 2 shows that most of the respondents, 3 or 15%, got a score of 10 to 12 with a percentage equivalent of 75 to 79%, described as fair passing. Then 5 or 25% got a score of 13 to 14 with a percentage equivalent of 80 to 84%, described as good. However, no respondent got a score of 20 and 0 with a percentage equivalent of 0% described as excellent or failure. Furthermore, 10 or 50% got a score of 15 to 17 with a percentage equivalent of 85 to 89 were described as very good. Moreover, 2 or 10% of the respondents got a score of 18 to 19 with equivalent percentage of 90 to 94% described as superior. Overall, the results showed a huge slip of 40% among the respondents who failed in the pre-test passed in the post-test with a 0% failing. Also, a distinct improvement of 10% in the pre-test considered as very good and superior jumped to 60% in the post-test. Evidently, the flipped classroom boosted the performance of students. Table 3. Students' attitude towards using flipped classroom. Table 3 reveals that the mean of students' attitude towards flipped classroom with average of 4.595 and a standard deviation of 0.8117, which is interpreted as high, all items receive a high result. The item referring to the use of instructional videos to better understand the concepts and principles in calculus got the highest mean score with a standard deviation of 0.82558 and interpreted as high. Evidently, being a new generation of learners, it is perceived that they have high regard to flipped classroom learning. Table 4 reveals the result of significant difference between pretest scores, post-test scores, mean, standard deviation, p-value, decision, and interpretation. The p-value between the pretest and the post-test of the experimental group is negative 3.95 with 19 degrees of freedom, since the mean of the post-test score of the experimental group is higher, that is 76.15, than the mean of the pretest scores of the experimental group, which is 55.6. This means that the null hypothesis is rejected in favor of the research hypothesis. Consequently, p-value is less than 0.05. Similarly, the result means that there is a significant difference between the scores of the pretest and post-test in the experimental group. It can be deduced that the utilization of the flipped classroom in teaching mathematics, especially calculus, has positively raised up students' achievement. Furthermore, this study infers that the result is true to the entire population since the result is significant. Conclusions. The findings of this study were affixed from the experiment conducted with the flipped classroom as an intervention. Research out from the study, flipped classroom is incidental to have significant great impact on students' academic performance in calculus. The researcher developed and validated video lessons, tests, and questionnaires in calculus to determine their impact on the first-year electrical and mechanical engineering students. Moreover, the mean of the post-test scores was higher compared to the pre-test after the said intervention conducted. Correspondingly, the null hypothesis was rejected in favor of the research hypothesis. Obviously, it revealed that there is a significant difference between the pre-test and post-test scores of the experimental group. Consequently, results discovered that flipped classroom is an operational approach in improving the students' academic performance in calculus. Recommendations. From the conclusions of the study, it is highly recommended that flipped classroom be introduced to other arduous topics in calculus. Educationalists may institutionalize the use of flipped classroom and other pedagogies that may be presented towards 21st century education to have decisive results and limit the errors. Succeeding researchers of the flipped classroom method may use greater sample size. Respectively, video lessons can be modified to make it more interesting on the part of the students. In some way, researchers may also devise, implement, and evaluate outcomes of the assimilation of flipped classroom in teaching mathematics and other subjects. Thank you very much for listening. Madamo gid nga salamat.